Hey cutie. Welcome back or welcome to my channel if you're new. My name is Laura. Hi, hello, welcome. It's time for my Pan That Palette update for March. This is my second month using my Pan That palette, and if you did miss my introduction or my last update as well, I'm going to link my playlist in the cards for you, but I am doing a rotational build your own palette with my Colourpop palettes. So I decorated my Going Coconuts palette. That's what this guy was. I've decorated my Going Coconuts palette with like all of these wonderful bedazzly gems, and I have hand selected shades out of the Colourpop palettes that I do own. So I owned the Going Coconuts palette, this guy here, Pretty Guardian palette with Sailor Moon, Bare Necessities palette, and I decided that I wanted to rotate through them, just hit pan, maybe finish a couple shades here and there, and I'm actually making really good progress inside of the shades that I've selected. Last month I actually hit a goal and rolled something out, and I actually hit a couple goals this month, and I'm really surprised at the progress that I made inside of this palette within the past month. When I filmed my last update, it was actually like February 7th or 5th or something like that. I had just come back from a trip and had not used makeup for like the entire 5 days leading up to Pan That palette. So I've made a lot of progress in this over like the past 20 something days, 23 days or so. And I'm shocked and I'm so excited. And I know you guys are going to also be so excited to see the damage I've done in this palette over the past month. And I'm excited to share that with you. So first, I'm just going to roll the clip of what this was looking like last month. And this is what the palette is looking like today. And there's some serious changes in there that I know you're going to be able to spot out immediately. I'm so excited to finally share this with you. I hit some of these goals a couple days ago, and I'm just shocked that I did, honestly. So we're just going to go shade by shade in this palette. I'll have the stats go up over there as well. Maybe you like to see the numbers rather than hear the numbers talked at you kind of thing. So the shade up here is In the Buff. This comes from my Bare Necessities palette. I ended up using this shade another 19 times within the month, but 45 in the project on this. And this was a pan that I hit on the 26th of February, and I was not expecting to hit pan in that shade. So it was quite the shock for me to when I did hit pan. I was expecting this to stay in the project for at least until April. I can't believe I'm already rolling it out. The next shade is this guy here. This is a shade I'm really focusing on this year, and that's a shade I want to finish out of that palette. That is the shade from MBA Cosmetics. It's the shade Glow For It. It is a super, super crumbly shade. It constantly shatters. I have to repress it. Shatters. I have to repress it. It shattered about a week ago now. I repressed what was left. It made a complete coverage of the pan it's in now. I have a clip of it. I will post it somewhere on the screen so you can see it. But I did repress that a few days ago, and I've already like substantially increased the pan. And I don't know if you'll really be able to see in there. I am really hoping. There is not a lot of product left in this. If I focus on this every single day for the next week, I will be able to get that shade out. I do use it as a highlight as well as an eye color. Like I have it on as my eyeshadow, like a base layer. I have some other things topping it, because it is a little bit more sheer of a shade. So it does just offer a really nice like duochrome flip to whatever shade you have on. So I really liked this to layer on top of the shade down here, which was Cufflinks, but we'll talk about that in a second. This is the shade that I'm thinking I can finish by next month. Whether I use it as an eyeshadow or I only use it as a highlight or I use it in a combination of both, like I have it on as both today. Then over here is another shade from the Bare Necessities palette. This is the shade On Holiday. It is a super cool toned, really soft transition neutral kind of shade. It's almost a little bit too cool toned for my personal everyday preference. I toyed with the idea of rolling this shade out of the project But I think I'm actually just going to leave it in. I'm going to reach for it when I do, like, I reached for it in this look today. I've been kind of combining these two shades. But yeah, I've been enjoying this. It's not the easiest one to reach for anymore, just because we're getting to the warmer months. So if I don't reach for this in March, I think I might roll it out next update just to focus on something else and maybe roll this back in at a later point. But I mean, I've reached for it more than I would have reached for it previously. I reached for it 7 times this past month and a total of 25 times in this project already. Genie over here is the next shade, and that's again from my Bare Necessities palette. It's almost a too warm toned kind of gold shade. These, I used to really like shades like that, but it's just not really my preference anymore. However, I really do enjoy layering this shade with other shades on top of it. So that's how I've been getting a lot more of the use on this one. And especially now that I don't have this like center look that I'm going to be panning anymore, I'm really going to be probably leaning into more warm tones, and you'll see that that's kind of a theme on our roll-ins. I'm really hoping that I can switch my focus over to Genie and maybe make that my like primary focus. After I finish this guy, I'm going to switch my focus completely to this and maybe focus on my green shadows for the month of March. I am really looking forward to using that shade more. The most impressive thing in this palette by far is the shade in the center, which was a repressed, rehomed version of Glass Bowl. So I did press some of Glass Bowl into there, and I actually have finished that off now. That look that I was talking about with these 3 shades, or all of these 7 shades, that was kind of my work go-to look. I would use all of those in one work that I would go to the office in, and I go to the office like 10 days out of the month. The rest I'm at home, so I can kind of do whatever with my eyeshadow. But when I go to the office, I kind of just want my staple look that I can rinse and repeat and not have to really think too much about it and just look put together. Like, this is something that I feel like I could wear to the office and not be super outlandish and still feel really put together, but also like very glammed up for myself. I really loved it. Then the next shade in the project is this guy here, Shell Yeah, which just seems like more of my neglected shade in this project so far. This has been in since January, since the introduction, and I have only reached for this another 9 times in the project, a total of 17 times, and I just need to up my usage. And I think part of that was because I can use this, like this shade here, surprisingly, it looks a lot darker, but it's surprisingly kind of the same depth in tone on the eye as Shell Yeah. So I can use these for pretty similar things, which is kind of just like as a base shade. I blend it up and out, and then I can use this to the office. So that's kind of going to be where I'm switching things up. So instead of going with Cufflinks how I was, I think I might be focusing on Shell Yeah, just because that's my least used shade in this palette so far. Since the least used shade that's been in since the beginning. And I just think I need to get a little bit more use on that. And I'm a little more nervous about Shell Yeah because it's one of the more firmly pressed shades from Colourpop. So I'm a little more nervous I'm not going to hit pan on that shade, and I definitely need to put my focus on it. The next shade actually is my least used shade in the palette by far. This is the shade Complicated. This I'm not too worried about though, because this did roll in last month, so it's only been in for 1 month. And because I was focusing on more of the cool tones for February, that's when I really like to wear more cooler tones. However, now I'm kind of on a kick with it, and I don't want to let go. But that shade Complicated, again, from my Bare Necessities palette. This one I reached for 2 times. It's a softer formula of matte from Colourpop. It's one of the matte with shimmer particles in it, which surprisingly doesn't bother me. I do my eyeshadow first most days. Any glitter fallout that gets down doesn't affect me. So take that with what you will. That middle lower row, shade Cufflinks, that's, I think, the most proud I am is in the Cufflink shade. I really didn't expect to hit pan in this. Like, I knew I was surprised with this one. I was kind of gunning and trying to hit pan in it, but I was looking at the pans and I was like, you know, it's probably not going to happen for me in this month. And, you know, I got to be okay with that. Like, I'm making a lot of good progress in this palette in itself. Like, I'm okay if this sticks around for another month, gives me time to focus on this shade and maybe some other shades that I've been liking using with this kind of base shade, because I use that all over my lid and I layer other things on top. because the shimmers in this almost make it more of a satin kind of finish on the eye. So I'm feeling really successful in this project, honestly. So if you are thinking about maybe like doing a rotational style, I highly recommend picking your own shades because man, I'm having a great time with this. But that takes us to the last shade in the palette, which is the shade Nutty, which you can clearly see I have been really, really working on. I have used this as my outer corner shade. Like I have it mixed in with a couple other shades from my outer corner shade today. I use this in my brows just to fill any sparse area in, which isn't a whole lot. I have really thick, dark brows, so I don't really need to use something like this in many spots, but I have like a little sparse patch up here that I try to just shimmy color in, and then I'll just do the tails, and that's literally it. But I am making some progress in that shade. You can sheer it out so it's not as full on deep as it looks in the pan. I am really going to try to hit pan in that shade clearly, but I'm really proud of what I did in this palette. Now, I was trying to use each shade 10 times and try to catch up my usage on shades from the previous month. So I'm going to hold this up really as still as I possibly can and put the number of uses in each shade that we had this month so you can see if we met the goal or not. I really just want to target 10 uses for each of these shades just to kind of keep me on pace. If I do more some months, awesome. If I do less some months, totally fine. Every month, every use I dip into these shades is a use more than I would have had without this, you know? On top of the usage goal this month, I did have two other goals. One was to completely finish off Glass Bowl, which we did, and then the other was to hit pan and cufflinks, which we did. And I had the little bonus of actually hitting pan in the buff here too. So again, a goal I didn't expect to meet, but I'm pretty happy that I did. And let me just go ahead and swap the shades out, but I will really quickly just show a slideshow of what this palette is looking like. And this is the new rotation of shades in here. And we definitely are a little bit more neutral. We're a little less cool toned. We have a little bit more mauves in here with the shade down here. This is actually from the Colourpop Bare Necessities palette. All of the new shades are from the Bare Necessities palette, so we're sticking with the theme Bare Necessities in this guy currently. I needed a little bit more deeper transition shade than the really cool tone that was in the buff. So just a nice transition shade. It's also a softer formula from Colourpop, so I think I actually can hit pan in that pretty quickly. This guy here is the shade The Talk, again, from the Bare Necessities palette. This is really, really pretty as well. It's like a true rose gold kind of shade. And then this is just a almost deeper version of that, slightly more mauve toned. This is the shade Designer Duds, again, from that Colourpop palette. As you can see, it's just maybe a little bit more copper, but it's definitely like a deeper rose gold in my opinion. The focus really is to hit pan in these shades, not necessarily finish them. That's why we're rotating more shades from palettes that don't have a lot of pan in them. I.e. now it looks like I have a ton of pan in this palette, but this Bare Necessities palette had barely any pan at the start of the year. And then my Colourpop Sailor Moon palette, clearly we have a ton of pan going on in here as well. So I'm just rotating the shades that I'm feeling, especially with the rotation of shades that I want to hit my goals on within this palette that have been in since other rotations, as well as, you can't see it now, but over here I have my stash of seasonal palettes that I want to use. So these kind of fit the vibe, and I can get my neutral work looks out of this, and then I can reach into everything else and get a lot of use out of everything else during the week. I really want to focus on the mattes in these. There's a lot of matte shadows in Colourpop, and a lot of them do take quite a bit of time. So I'm really trying to do my long haul products and really focus on those with some of the goals where I can maybe hit them a little easier with the shimmers. That's going to be what I can rotate in and out a little bit more effortlessly. Let's talk goals for the month of March with this palette, what I think that I can achieve in this palette. First of all, what goal do we think I'm going to set for sure? I think for sure I'm going to finish that shade Glow For It. That is a no-brainer shade. If I wear that only as a highlight, I can get that gone within the month of March. I have no problem with that. Then on top of that, I also really, really want to hit pan in the shade Genie up here. This is something that's been in, again, since the beginning of the project. It's a shade that I like to layer my other multi-chromes in on top of. I can wear it with literally any of the neutral mattes in this palette, and I can layer other shades on top of it. And that's really what I like to use this shade for. It's really like a base layer, and then I layer other things on top of it. You know, I'm gonna try to hit pan in the shade Nutty down there as well. I have a lot of deep browns in my Bare Necessities palette that I'm going to have to focus on at some point this year. So I really want to focus and hit pan in this. I really want to see as many pans in these Colourpop palettes as humanly possible. These are palettes that Josh has actually bought me. All of these are palettes Josh has bought me, so it all offers like this really good nostalgic, like, I'm using something that my loved one has given me, and it makes me very happy. Oh my gosh, a gem just fell off. No. I try to incorporate at least one shade from my Pan That palette in any given look, and it's been causing some not so great usage in other projects. Like, I'm trying to do Project 24 uses with my loose liquid and cream shadows, and I feel like I'm struggling a little bit in that project. Alternatively, it's letting me reach for a lot of palettes in my collection that might have more shimmers to mattes, so I'm able to rotate through things and still get really good use out of the shades that are in here while still fluctuating in my collection. So I don't really feel bored all too often, but I do really just feel inspired this year to really try to gravitate most of my focus in this arrangement. Like, this has completely sated the fix of like a BYOP anymore, which is like completely wild to me. But that is it for my Pan That palette for now. Stay tuned if you want to see the montage of all of the palettes. I do put them back in their original state so you can kind of see the usage through the palettes themselves. If you are someone that maybe has the palettes and wants to see which shades I'm focusing on, where they go in the home palettes. But yeah, I will have that at the end of this video. But thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know how you're doing if you're doing a Pan That palette this year. I would love to know. I hope you're staying healthy, sane, and safe. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.